Welcome to the International Kit, a new podcast about mechanical keyboards incorporating a European perspective. My name is Sebastian, known online as kwer, written with a K and W. And with me is my co-host Hannes, a.k.a. egla. So, what do we have in store today?
Oh, today we have something special in store for you for our first episode. I'd like to introduce Jay to you. Jay is a long-standing community member of the UK mechanical keyboard community and is known for owning a big variety of boards and streaming various builds on Twitch recently. Welcome to the International Kit, Jay. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you both for having me on the show.
Thank you for being with us.
So, did I miss anything important in our intro? What do you do when you're not working on keyboards? And just quickly introduce yourself, additionally to what I just said.
So outside of the mechanical keyboard community, I'm a product owner working for a large multinational corporation. I've done that for about 6 or 7 years. I love and hate it all at the same time. But mechanical keyboards and cars are my two big hobbies. For anyone who doesn't know about my keyboard collection, my car collection is slowly starting to rival it. So that's the other big thing that I'm into as well.
How many cars do you have?
At the moment, fully built, I have 7 cars that are up and running on the road, and I have about 4 that are in bits and pieces and various stages of being rebuilt, and 2 motorbikes as well.
It's a bit more complicated than building a keyboard, I guess.
A little bit, yes. A few more parts. Not many, but a few more parts.
Storage should also be an issue.
Yeah, so actually where I store a lot of my keyboards is in the garage where the cars are, because I've got a bit of a lockup where I keep some of the cars. I've also got some heavy machinery there where I use stamp presses and a small CNC mill and stuff like that to make keyboard parts as well, to make car parts as well as the odd keyboard part to replace things.
Well, that's actually a good overlap then between hobbies.
Yeah, it's good to be able to come up with designs and prototypes. I can't see any CNC anything that would be worthwhile putting into a group buy or anything like that. I can't do what the likes of Salvin or Rama can do with their tooling, but I can do enough to get rough prototypes, CNC blocks of wood and plastic and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty good, pretty useful.
So how did you get into mechanical keyboards?
At work, I'm literally on a keyboard all day, every day. So a few years ago, I was looking into how I could find something that was a little bit more comfortable to use every day. I got sucked into the whole gamer sphere of keyboards, so the Razer and all of this RGB lighting, Cherry MX Red type plastic stuff. And it was much better than using the old rubber dome stuff. It was much better than using what works Plied on my laptop keyboard and all of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't particularly great. It just felt nicer. And I guess looking back at that point, I didn't realise how good things could be in the keyboard world. But it was a bit of a rabbit hole. From Razer boards, I found the Reddit for mechanical keyboards. And then from there, I found Geek Hack. And then I found group buys. And then I found a big hole in my wallet. And so literally all of the stuff started to come at once. From there it was keycaps and different types of switches, whatever I could get my hands on I wanted to try, all in search of that one board that would fix things for me at work, make it comfortable to type, make my day feel a little bit better. The gains were huge at first, and then they became slowly more incremental. So you'd have one board that would have a massive difference from a previous one, and then now I'm starting to slowly edge towards endgame, I suspect. The updates I seem to be putting on my boards and the steps I'm changing from one build to the next are very, very slight now when I'm doing things for myself. So I think I'm getting towards what my ideal board is, but it's a slow process.
So what is your current ideal board then?
I've got 2 daily drivers at the moment. One is a TX 1800, which is what I use at work. It's in a lovely blue colour with GMK ski data caps on. And that's got tangerine switches in, which have been lubed and looked after, and GMK screw and stabs. At home, I use a Canoe, which has a little bit of a better sound because it's got Holly Pandas in, so it's a little bit more clacky. And that's wearing GMK Solarized Dark at the moment.
2 lovely boards. I'm too a fan of the 1800 layout.
Yeah, I've actually got 2 TX 1800s. I've got one at work, which is the blue one, and I've got another one at home, which is actually it's right by my knee at the moment. I desoldered it to steal the pandas out of it to make another board, but it's going to be rebuilt with Revo clears, and that's going to go to be the work board eventually at some point. yeah, I can't live at work without a numpad. Spreadsheets are a way of life for many of us, unfortunately.
Am I seeing that correctly, that Holy Pandas are your favorite switch?
Um, I think if I want my keyboard to be clacky, yes. I don't think I could ever have one specific layout as endgame. I think my endgame is actually having a work layout and a home layout that both complement what I do. They feel nice to type on, and they complement what I do at home and work, and how I need my input device to interact with the computer, to be honest, and myself as well. So I think my end game is actually two boards. Holy Pandas are definitely my favorite tactile switch, or MX tactile switch. I'll clarify that. I think if we're going to go, what is my favorite switch overall? I'd have to say it's Brown Alps, which I've got a bag of sat right in front of me, just begging to be built, but I'm 10 short, so I'm waiting for another 10 to be delivered in a few weeks. But yeah, as I say, work's very different. So from a work perspective, I have to have not necessarily a silent board, but something that's not going to cause complaints across the office. And I suspect a Holy Panda board would be a little bit too on the clacky side to be acceptable.
Oh yeah, I can see that. So what are your favorite experiences in the community so far, or what do you like doing in the community? Is Twitch streaming the thing that you want to go more into?
So Twitch streaming is something that's relatively new to me. It literally came about because I saw Nathan Kim's videos and Twitch stream, and someone suggested, just half randomly, half jokingly, that I should give it a go, because I build boards nearly every week, and people are always interested in that kind of stuff. So I was actually speaking with Huey from Top Clack, and he suggested it. He was the person that said, you should stream yourself and try that. I do really enjoy doing the streams. Best thing about doing a stream is actually being able to interact with the chat and have a chat with people and have a bit of a laugh and a joke, and people can ask you questions and you can show them. And I think you kind of lose that interaction with things like YouTube and other video services, and even forums to an extent as well. The rate of conversing with your viewers is much less. When you're doing it on live stream, effectively, people can ask questions, you can show them there, and then you don't have to do another video or type up a wordy response to them or anything like that. You can literally just show them there, and you can respond directly to the questions. It's much more engaging as a format, I've found. But to go back to your question in terms of what else am I doing in the community, lots of different things. Recently, I've run one of the meetups in the UK. That was back in May in Leeds. So I was pulled all that together, arranged a meetup for about 40, 50 people, something like that. So it was all of the venue, getting people's boards there, making sure we had food and drink and all of that kind of good stuff. And then recently I attended the last Mechanical Keyboards UK meetup, which was just last weekend on the 11th of August. In Birmingham, where I did a bit of a panel talk show called A Question of Keybs, which had a terrible name, but it was quite funny. And effectively what we did was we got some of the UK community members out there. So we got Pexon from Pexon PCs, the cable maker. We got Zondat, who designs the Noxery boards. We got Glove, who makes artisans for glove caps. And we did a bit of a panel show where I acted as a bit of a host, asked some questions that the community had raised. Some quite challenging, others quite fun. Then we opened it up to the floor, asked a few questions, and did that kind of stuff. So there should be a video of that coming out soon. That the Pokemon kid Matt.
Oh yeah, that's nice. It's just something that's bothering me in Germany a bit. Is there are no meetups here? There's one every year, and this year the communication is not that great because usually it's around end of September, beginning of October. But so far there hasn't even been a date confirmed or anything, so it's really hard to plan around it.
Yeah, just rumors floating around, like, yeah, it's going planned, they're looking for a venue and stuff like that, but nothing at least somewhat official in any capacity.
Yeah, I kind of get that because we had a little bit of that in the UK. So we had a meetup in February, which was the first meetup I went to, and that was based in London. And the challenge we had is the UK is quite small, but people don't like to travel in the UK. I think you Europeans are much more accustomed to travel than we are. And there was a whole raft of people who were active in the community that didn't want to travel from Scotland or from Northern England or from Wales or from Ireland or even some of the surrounding countries like the Netherlands and places like that, France. People didn't come to it because they didn't want to travel there. So that was the whole reason why I set up the Leeds meetup, to try and have a meetup that was in the UK but a little bit further north and didn't leave out all of those people towards the top end of the country. So my advice would be just step up and run your own.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I can see that going to London would be way easier than going to Leeds, for example. Because I looked at pricing for going to Birmingham, and I mean, I can go to London for like 30 euros, but to Birmingham it was like 300. So
interestingly, it cost me £300 to get to London from where I am. So €30 for you to travel to Leeds. It's cheaper for you to get there than it is for me.
Yeah, in Europe you're just a bit constrained by where the budget airlines go, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think within the UK though, I think most people tend to train it or drive it. Domestic flights in the UK aren't particularly cheap, so I think most people tend to drive. And just having that northern meet just opened it up to a few more people that didn't want to travel all the way to London, I think. But I think that there's a big community out there. There's a lot more people in the community than what you realise. More people turn up to the events that you don't know than you do know, even from their usernames and Discord tags. You meet people who just lurk in the community, or they've seen the tickets on sale. They have one board and they're interested in finding more, or they want to buy the next custom and they want to try someone else's switches and all of this. The meetup people are much more diverse than the regulars in all of the websites that we use and the services that we use to chat.
Yeah, and I mean, meetups are the best way to experience other boards, other switches, other keycaps. It's just so many of those things are fairly expensive for just trying it. Going to a meetup is just the best way to do it. Like, I want to try a Topper board, but I'm not just gonna buy one just to try it out and see if I like it. So going to a meetup definitely would help with that, which is, I'm pretty sure this is a big reason why just so many people show up.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think people just want to try new things, and the money is a big blocker in the hobby. I don't think people are too scared of spending the money. I think people who want the custom boards and everything else are happy to spend the money. But you're right; they want to know what they're spending their money on up front. And meetups are the one way that we can accommodate that requirement. We can allow people to try other people's things, and we can talk about it, and you get much more out of an interaction face to face than you do over the phone or through a forum or whatever else your medium of choice to talk is. I think those face to face interactions are much more valuable to us as humans as well.
Yeah, and as the community grow and the options grow, it's just at some point it's just impossible to try everything by yourself. I mean, if you look how many different switches are around already at the moment, and just growing and growing and growing, and you just can't try all of those.
And then especially if you consider like switch mods, like taking different parts and putting them together and stuff like that. So you can't have everything, especially pandas nowadays.
Especially pandas, yeah. It's not. You're right. No, you're 100% right. It's not just the sheer volume of manufactured switches. It's the sheer volume of customized and tweaked switches. You can't buy very many switches that are pre-lubed, and you certainly can't pick which lube comes in the switches if they are pre-lubed. And there's all of these tweaks and controls that we've got in place that try and improve the quality of our boards. But without us meeting up and without us sharing those experiences with each other, all we've got is literal text and video files on the internet, which it's very difficult to base an opinion or a judgment or a spending decision on something as arbitrary as that sometimes.
Yeah, even if it goes down to layouts and stuff, it's just and you go to a meetup and you try boards, and you might find the one that you really like, and you just go to the person and ask them, so like, what did you do to it? How did you build it so you can do it yourself afterwards? So
absolutely, yeah. I think you're 100% right again, and that was the reason why I started to do the Twitch streams, because people saw my boards at the meetup, they liked them. I kind of do builds fairly frequently, usually one a week on average, I'd say. And when it was suggested to me to have a go at doing the live streams, I think they work really well. They're best. How to word this? They're probably the better way of interacting with the community after meetups. I think you can accommodate people's questions and requirements, and it just helps to answer questions and foster a better community. You're helping each other out. This community should be built on a foundation of helping others and trust, implicit that we're good people. I'd hate to think that it was built on people lying or tweaking things in a negative manner to try and get personal gain.
Yeah, that's sadly too often the case that something like that happens. So it's always good to have a positive example.
Yeah, I think the current round of, as you mentioned before, pandas, the rarity and the demand for those has had both positive and negative impacts on the community, I think.
Oh yeah. So let's talk a bit about the Hyper 7. Can you quickly try to explain to everybody what the Hyper 7 is? And I just want to quickly add in here, if you listen to this podcast on a podcast player, most podcast players should be able to show you chapter artwork. So if you look at whatever device you're listening to at the moment, you will see an image of the Hyper 7 to help you a bit with visualizing it.
Though it might be quite hard to fit the whole board into the small artwork.
Yeah, the Hyper 7. I suspect that this is the board that actually got me a bit of infamy on Reddit, and it's probably the main reason why people know me within the community. But the Hyper 7 was a bit of a pipe dream. It's somewhere in the region of 173 to 175% board, depending on whether you count a full layout as ISO or ANSI. So there's arguments over that. But I call it 173% board. But it's built off an idea that's not mine. All credit for the original idea for Hyper 7 goes to 7-bit, and 7-bit's from Death Authority community. And a few years ago, he designed a theoretical board he called the Hyper 7. He even had keycaps made from it by Signature Plastics. And it was a layout that paid homage to the old Lisp boards of the 80s. With Greek characters and multiple functions and a number of layers and all of this kind of thing. If you look on YouTube, there's all sorts of videos. I think Thomas Kwer has done a couple of videos on these old Lisp machines as well. And 7-bit designed this board to kind of be a multi-function board, designed to be able to accommodate all of those old functions and bring it into the new world as well. So the layout's a bit obscure. You couldn't badge it as ANSI or ISO or anything in between. It's very much its own layout. And so 7-bit designed it. It's 213 switches if I remember correctly. So it's absolutely huge, but it's a split board as well. So it's got a separate angled array of keys as well, which are sat at an angle at the back of the board. But he designed it because he wanted to pay homage to those old Lisp boards. From what I understand, he had a team that tried to build some prototypes, but the project never really got off the ground. I think they had some prototypes produced, but I don't think the whole thing was ever working. And one day I was just browsing, looking with some friends. Shout out to Gimli, who was the guy that pointed it out to me, on the old round 5 and round 6 keycap sets that were for sale on Death Authority, and still are some kits for sale on there. And there was a whole Hyper 7 kit for sale left on there that no one had bought because no one had a board to use it on. I think there were 5 or 6 of these kits made ultimately. I think probably 7-bit owns one. The only other one I know of that's out there in the wild is owned by Olivia, who's a good friend of mine. And I know a couple of people got partial kits, but that's about it. And once I saw the keycaps, I fell in love with them. I'd always wanted the Space Cadet keycaps, and these are very reminiscent of them, so I just bought the kit. And the kit sat around for about a month, and then I thought I should do something with it rather than just use the alphas. I should actually use the whole set. And from there, with Gimli and a few others from the UK community, I can't shout everyone out, but everyone knows who they are. The idea of building this board came to life. So we had a chat with Yankar, who's also a good friend, designs PCBs, who's recently responsible for the HS60 and a couple of other PCBs in the marketplace as well. And he said he didn't see it as a problem. He could make both the boards talk to each other and all of that kind of gubbins. I couldn't tell you how it works. I just know that it does. So between me and a few other people, we bought 9 prototype PCBs. as soon as I got mine, I couldn't wait to build it. So I got in touch with HB Hero and Bob Paul, who's the Utemu rep. He helped me out with some switches. So the board got built with Utemu Ice Grey V2s. And here we are. That's the story of how Hyper 7 came into being. It was very much designed as a prototype on the back of someone else's dream that I wanted to follow.
Yeah, I think I saw it on Reddit when you had the first prototype, when you posted the first prototype, and it just looks insane. So it's like a horizontal split board.
Yes.
And the old version had only 2 rows on the top.
It did, yes. There was a slight design flaw when we first looked at it. When we first started to look at the PCB, the caps hadn't actually been delivered at that point. Only part of the kit had, so I'd only got the alphas at that point. And we looked at some old renders from 7-bit on how he designed the board. So we kept his layout, but we wanted to do our own take on the actual board itself. And rather than looking at the PCBs he designed or looking at the actual keycaps themselves, we decided to just go off one random render that we saw that had 2 rows at the top and then all of the rest of the rows on the bottom on the flat part of the keyboard. That turned out to be a bit of a mistake. And when the PCBs came and I'd got all the caps, we realised that as soon as I put it together. And the reason it's a bit of a mistake is because the signature plastic keycaps, so they're actually sculpted. They're SA profile. So the sculpt is designed to curve down naturally from the top horizontal board onto the bottom horizontal board. And if you look at the images of the first prototype, you'll see that that's not the case. There is a pesky row 3 right at the back of the right in between the 2 boards that should sit on the top board and is due to our error sat on the bottom board. But that didn't deter us. I still built it, put it together, put the keycaps on it, and then in about 45 minutes I knocked up a rough wooden case. So if anyone looks too closely at the pictures on Reddit, you will see that the case is really, really rough. It's literally just sawn out of MDF on a bench saw and then painted blue. But that doesn't detract from the usability and the complexities in the keyboard itself. The case is almost inconsequential, to be honest. The main part of it is having that particular layout with those keycaps on a working PCB. That was always the aim.
Yeah, it's just one question, because if you look at the pictures with keycaps, you see the top rows are 2U wide.
Yes.
But if you look at the PCB, it's all single switch
Yes.
Positions. So you actually have 2 switches under each 2U keycap.
Correct, yeah. They're what's called POS caps, point of sale keycaps that Signature Plastics produce. So you can't actually use stabilizers with them because they've only got 2 keycap prongs on the bottom. So you literally have to put 2 switches in the standard spacing, and the point of sale keycaps sit on top of them. So instead of having a stabilizer, you have 2 key switches. It does make them twice as hard to press, but the fact that they're on a top row that you're pressing at an angle makes them a lot easier to press, so you kind of don't notice the weight difference on them, or certainly I don't. But yeah, so you can't use those keycaps on anything else. Now the interesting thing as well is when we were designing this, Yankar actually said, how are we going to work that with the 2 switches? Because our original instinct had been to put 2 switches in there, but just make the left one of each pair the one that was connected up to QMK, and just have the other one as a stabilizer switch almost. But Yankar actually encouraged us to not do that and have both of the switches individually addressable. So you could actually control them within QMK and have each switch as a different function if you wanted to, just in case we ever decided to not use the 2U POS caps and use just single individual keycaps. So theoretically on the board I could take all of those 2U keycaps off, rehash the flash file, the QMK code, and put individual keycaps and have twice as many keys on that top board.
Oh, that's actually awesome. That helps, especially if you think about how many of those keycap sets were actually made. So if there are only 6 or 7 people maximum having those caps.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think 2U POS keycaps are rather rare, actually. I mean, I think you see some in grab bags from SA or so sometimes, but getting all or enough for the whole top row could be rather hard.
You have to buy lots of grab bags.
The other option is to go on Pimp My Keyboard. You can buy individual 2U POS caps. But from memory, and this people might have to validate this, but you can only buy row 1 keycaps. You can't buy row 2. So the actual sculpt of the top board in the prototype goes row 1, row 2, whereas it should go row 1, row 2, row 3, and then it drops you onto the bottom board. But yeah, you'll struggle with the POS keycaps, and that was part of the reason why we made that decision, because we knew that all 7 or 8 of us that were in the original group, not all of us would get the key set. So we wanted to make sure that everyone could use it to the fullest capability. Interestingly enough, if you want to buy GMK Space Cadet, you can make it work if you buy something like 27 of the international kit. You'll have the wrong legends, but you can make it work with individual keycaps. So yeah, feel free to do that, guys. Get the international kits numbers bolstered up there for us.
Yeah. So you had your prototype, you realized 2 rows, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And at what point did you figure out you want to run a group buy with this?
So I never intended to run a group buy, and to be honest, when I realised that we'd done the rows slightly wrong, there was never any intention to even fix that. As far as I was concerned at that point, it was done. The board was soldered together. I think the weekend after I'd put the board together, I made the case in my workshop really quickly. As I say, it took about 45 minutes, including painting it, and then I screwed it all together. I used it for a little bit, and then I thought, you know what, I'll take some pictures. Popped it on Reddit, and the whole thing went a little bit viral, or as viral as a mechanical keyboard can go, I guess. So I think it ended up with something like, I don't know, 500,000 views and 11,000 upvotes or something like that. But it was the community off the back of that. It was quite divisive. People either loved it or hated it. A lot of people disliked it, but those that did love it wanted to buy it. So I think off the back of that one post, I think I had something like 55 people ask me if I was going to sell the board, or if they could buy it off me, or if they could buy a version of it, or if I would give them the PCB files or whatever. And that really made me think. I thought, well, if there's a demand out there for it, maybe I should just run a group buy. Let people have what they want. Take the opportunity to fix the layout, and get those out there. So that's what we did. Ran a group buy for it over the past couple of months, and it's literally just about to ship out as we're recording this podcast. The last of the boxes are sat at the side of me, ready to go to the postal office tomorrow morning.
Almost like we planned it.
Almost like we planned it. Yeah, something like that.
So what other problems did you encounter? I guess like nobody really makes boards this size. So did there anything come up? Any problems you encountered just because of what it was?
Yeah, quite a few actually. When we were doing the prototype, we approached quite a few different PCB companies, Easy EDA and a few others that Yankai uses, and no one could accommodate the size of the PCB. Their PCB printers were all a lot smaller, and they couldn't do it. We managed to find one Chinese company that could do it, but only if they did the 2 boards attached to each other. So we have to manually disconnect them when we receive them, and then resolder them together using a cable. So that was the first challenge we had, but we managed to find a company that could do it for us. The second challenge we had was making a plate. So designing a plate is dead easy. You can just go on SwillKB and put in your data, and you can create a plate for any board that you want. Adding mount points is relatively easy as well. We put in different mount points on round 2 to round 1 just because we knew where it needed more support. But yeah, so we could do all that just fine. But then again, the size brought us problems. I spoke to quite a few of the designers, Zonda, and a few other people around where they got their plates cut and made and how they got them manufactured. And most of these places, you tend to find that there's 2 types of laser cutters or water jet cutters, whatever type of company you're using. There's the type of companies that cater for commercial, domestic, almost based on look and feel and decorative items. That's probably the best way of describing them. Decorative laser cutters, almost, or for that kind of stuff. And then you also have what you call industrial. So these guys are designed to make the underside of cars and printed and stamped panels that they put into the sides of buildings and all of these sorts of things. pretty much every single board designer out there and every single plate that we buy for boards these days is done by a decorative manufacturer. So it's designed to be nicely finished, it's designed to be nicely painted or coated or whatever you want, or anodized or however you want to color it. Only none of those had a laser cutter big enough to support the plate. So we couldn't go to any of them. I literally tried about 15 different places, and I had a plate made for the for the prototype, but I made that myself in my garage, so it wasn't amazing. It didn't really stand up to much abuse. So we really struggled with that. It took about 4 weeks to actually find one decorative place that could do it. Their price was outrageous. It was more than what the keycaps had cost for a single plate, which was many hundreds of euros. So I said, no, we can't do that. And then someone suggested, why didn't I go somewhere that made panels for? Ironically, what they make panels for is if you've ever been into a school kitchen or a hospital kitchen, they have, or a fish and chip shop in the UK, you have these big fryers that are made of bent and folded steel or aluminium. And they've got massive side panels on them, and they have bits laser cut out for the trays to slot in and all sorts of stuff like that. So someone suggested one of these companies. Now, I didn't go with one of those companies, but it opened up my mind to these industrial laser cutters, effectively, where they've got these massive machines that they can do many meters of material at once with, so they can do pretty much any size that you want. The company we actually went with makes skips for a living, so that's what they generally make. They laser cut the sides of skips for refuse and trash. They said they could do it absolutely no problem. They gave me a price which wasn't terrible at all. I had a prototype made for them, and it worked just fine. But even that did come with its own challenges. They can only cut steel. They didn't support getting aluminium or copper or brass or any of these other materials that we're so used to using for plates today. Their only option was steel or mild steel. So it was one or the other. We chose the mild steel mainly because it doesn't tarnish as quickly as normal steel does. But what it does do is it leads to a nice patina on the plate. So over a little bit of time, you get a little bit of aging to the material, and then you can clear coat it. And it looks really nice. It looks old. It looks the part, and it fits the aesthetics of what the Hyper 7 is there to represent. So that's what we had to do in the end. So I made all this really clear up front at the start of the group buy, and luckily everyone was down and into that, and they didn't necessarily want these clean pressed out plates and all of that kind of good stuff. So those were the two biggest problems we had in just getting the project off the ground, to be honest with you.
Were you ever thinking about doing a case for it?
Yes. So Zonda had to go at making a case for us. He came up with some designs, but then he's got so many of his own projects on, he just couldn't carry on with it. He had to drop looking at it. Olivia and Wilbur have chatted about making a case before. They've looked at making some sort of case that was a bit of a wooden and steel hybrid, using the plate design and numerous other bits and pieces, but that's not yet come to fruition. But the beauty of the group buy is that it's just plates and PCBs. So I genuinely, the biggest thing for me on this is waiting to see what people come up with. A few of the boards have already been delivered, and I've seen a couple of Reddit posts where people have just got their PCBs and plates, and they seem really excited to actually go out and create something. So what I'm waiting to see is who makes the nicest one, so I can copy them. To be honest with you, that's literally what I'm waiting for now. I want to, it makes me really proud to see something like that out there, and I really want to see what people can come up with. What designs people do and how they make them up.
That's great, yeah. And I agree with you that the steel plate, if it ages, will fit the kind of vintage look of the board.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets a nice little pattern. It's not rust as such, it's kind of like a surface discoloration and stuff like that, and then I've just clear coated them all. A couple of people have asked for them painted, which is fine. I've put either primer on so they can paint it in their own colour, or I've painted them black for them, and that's fine. The other challenge we had as well is when I first got the plates, I painted them, but I quite quickly realised that where the company had laser cut the mounting points, they hadn't done them to a large enough diameter, and unfortunately they couldn't adjust them. They would have to recut the whole thing, which they said that the holes were within their tolerances, and there was a bit of an argument with them going backwards and forwards. So I ended up having to hand drill all of the mounting holes on both the lower and the upper plates, and we sold about 40 of
Oh,
these. And I think over the two plates, I think there's 63 mounting points or something like that. Yeah, so I had to drill hundreds and hundreds of holes manually and then deburr them before I started to clear coat them and paint them, which was slightly frustrating. Yeah, but we got through it. We got through it in the end, and it's all boxed and packaged up now. It's ready to go.
yeah, that's great.
Would you say that what the worst part about the group buy?
I think it was the most tedious part. I wouldn't say it was the worst because I like doing stuff with my hands. I like creating stuff, I like building things and being out in the workshop. Hence the attraction of cars and keyboards. I like to do stuff. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily the worst part. I think the worst part of the group buy is being responsible for so many people's investments. It's slightly terrifying when you realize that's all on you and it's your responsibility to now deliver on what you've promised people. That's the hardest thing to come to terms with, I think.
So this was your first group buy, right?
Yeah, first group buy. Yeah, run completely at a non-profit level, literally at cost as well. We didn't want to make any profit off this. The aim is to just get what people want into people's hands.
So did you plan the group buy out beforehand? Like, did you talk to other people who already had experience running group buys, or did you just wing it?
No. So working in project management, I've kind of got an idea of how to string these things together and come up with an idea. And as we all know, no plan's perfect. No matter what you planned for, as soon as you do the first action, things kind of start to go a little bit wrong, and it always starts to peel away from the plan. But I had a good chat with a few people that had run group buys previously, and I've met quite a lot of people through doing it as well. So Zondat has been quite close to a lot of it. He's understood a lot of it as well. And Gimli, he's run group buys for switches, and George, who run the Silent Black group buy that turned out to be Silent Reds, had a lot of interaction with him as well as to how he ran that and handled that kind of pressure. And then just speaking with people who run stores, so Max, who runs Cable Car Designs, and Pexon, who runs Pexon PCs for the cables and stuff like that. They're really good friends, and just taking their advice on board on how to even simple stuff like buy boxes and buy packaging, and making a almost like a home production line to box them and package them up in the same order, so you don't miss parts of an order out, and making sure everyone gets what they've actually asked for.
I think those are things that people don't realize that they're a lot of work. It's not just hard to get everything produced in the way you want, but you also have to package it and label it and ship it out yourself. And if it's something that is the size of the Hyper 7, that can be quite a lot of work. Even without considering that you had to drill all those holes by yourself.
Oh yeah, even if everything had come perfect and it would have been ready to box on the day, it wouldn't have added much time to the to where we are today. It wouldn't have been much sooner to ship out. And the reason is it takes an unbelievable amount of time to test everything, to plug it all in, make sure that both boards are working. And the other thing as well that we had to do was solder the two boards together. We didn't want people to have to struggle to put these kits together. So Yankar and I, we actually soldered all of the PCBs. We split them into two parts, and we soldered the connector cables together. So there was a lot of manual labour went into it. But even just down to the boxing of stuff, I think in total, I think it took me something like 24 hours worth of work over 3 or 4 days to actually do all of the boxing. It took me 4 hours to just get the boxes from the box that they came in and fold them into a box shape so I could put stuff in them and tape them all up. I think it took me about 4 hours just to do that. So you don't realise in advance how long it takes to actually just do the boxing, packaging, quality checking, testing of everything that you've got to package up and send out. It's an astronomical amount of time. It takes so much more effort than you realise. And that's probably my biggest learning as well. Dealing with the companies and dealing with the problems, that's all easy stuff. Just getting through the sheer volume of work sometimes that you've got to do to send this stuff out, it's not easy. And when you see these group buys that have got 1,000 boards in it, like the Rama ones and things like that, hats off to the people that have got the time, space, and effort to put people on it, because it's a massive job to do on your own.
So how did you handle communication in your group buy when problems came up, or just in general? Like, did you think about how you communicated, or did you just like write out whatever just happened and kept people in the loop that way?
My original plan was to use just Geek Hack, post regular updates on there on the thread that was for the Geek Buy for the group buy on Geek Hack. But Geek had its own challenges and problems over the past months, so we ended up reverting to what I found a much better way of communicating to people, which was a bit of an open email essay and mail shot that I sent out effectively once a week, just saying this is where we've got to, this is a progress from last week, and effectively doing a bit of a status update to say how we'd progressed and when people could expect things to happen, and if any delays had happened or if any risks had occurred, or like when I had to re-drill everything, just keeping people aware of what was going on really. So it was and there was quite a lot of back and forth in those email chains as well, people quite interactive about it, and chatting with each other about their ideas and support for the board, which is really nice to see.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that
awesome.
sounds pretty much the way you want group buy communication to be, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of group buys have a problem whereby people want information. They want to know what's happening with the group buy that they've put money into. And I think one of the things that we should really try and do as a community is make these group buys smoother. So even if there is no update after a month, just let people know that there's no update. Just say, we carried on, things are going all right, don't need to worry just yet. I think it just ease a lot of people's minds, make them feel a little bit more comfortable that things are happening and moving in the right direction. And certainly we shouldn't hide any problems or challenges. People are really understanding. They know that group buys are a risk. They know that group buys have their challenges and delays and things like that. And people are really supportive of that kind of stuff. So I think just being really open, honest, transparent about what's going on, what your challenges are, if things aren't going quite as well as you expect them to, just making sure that people are aware of that.
Yeah, right now I feel like oftentimes it just, there's an interest check and they're on a group buy, you get in and then there's just a void for like 2 months. Nothing happens, you have no idea what's going on. And at some point you realize some community members get samples or something and you see them, and it's like, oh, that's still a thing and it looks like it's almost done. And then slowly the updates are starting, or you just get a shipping information at some point. But in the meantime, in between, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes just the board shows up. Like, oh, right, I bought this.
Or if you buy it from Kin, who runs TX keyboards, you pay your money and then your board turns up, and then a week later you get your tracking information after you've already built it and put it on the stream. Kin's a lovely guy, but he doesn't update his tracking. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. One of the things I did try that didn't really work is I had a bit of an open Google spreadsheet that anyone could look at, and I just had a really high level timeline of when things should happen on there. That kind of fell apart when my wedding got brought forward by a year, and I ended up having to delay everything for a couple of weeks. So it's probably my fault that didn't really work, because I just kind of forgot to update it after those couple of weeks taken out for my wedding. But yeah, I think that's another option. Having some sort of visible plan, even if it's on your website, just a bit of a timeline and a bit of a marker to say, this is the timeline, this is where we're at now, this is what we've got left to do, even if it doesn't have dates on it, even if it just has a list of actions or phases or steps or something like that, so build and anode and shipping and delivery, even if it just has phases and it tells you which one it's in, a really good example of this actually is one of my favorite loves is pizza, and Domino's have a really good app that actually tells you what's happening to your pizza at any given time. I think just something really simple like that with no time scales on, but just steps from a group buy status, taking people's money, boards are ordered, they're now being CNC milled, they're now being anoded, they're now with me for quality checking, they're now out for shipping, shipping invoices out, or whatever it is, all of that kind of good stuff, really high level. It just keeps the community really engaged.
I think that's absolutely right. And especially important is for a group buy runner to be proactive about the communication, because in most of the group buys I currently participate in, it's always like community members who ask on the Geekhack threads or on the Discord channels or whatever, or send out emails, and then you sometimes get a Reddit post like, I got this email from the guy that says like that and that. And it's always like a bad aftertaste. I mean, you get the information, but it's so much better if you get it proactive from the guy who is responsible for the group by like, okay, here something happened, something has come up, this is the information, or like you said, just no update this week, everything is in plan, see you next week, or something like that. Just an email. I mean, you have the email addresses of everybody because of the PayPal invoices most of the time. So sending out email newsletters is like a few clicks these days. There are enough services for it.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be War and Peace. It doesn't need to be a big, heavy set of text. I mean, a lot of my updates work because I like to ramble, but for most people, you could just send out 3 or 4 lines. So things are progressing well. We're still on track, or there's been a delay due to manufacturing. We're working around it. We'll give you another update in a couple of weeks when we know it's back on track. Simple things like that. Another good example of how this is managed in some places is like Kickstarter. You have a really good way of interacting with people that have run Kickstarters. They can come out and give updates and posts, and people can comment on them, and it's kind of like an open visibility. I quite like that as well. If we had some sort of service that we could use for group buys like that, and the group buy runners took that on board, I think that'd be really, really valuable to the community.
That sounds like a really good idea. Somebody should make that. Please, whoever is listening, please make it.
And with the EU proxies, please. No mass drop. Like shipping GMK back and forth doesn't have to be that way. Everything we talked about, it sounds like your work experience, like your day job, has influenced the way you run a group buy heavily. So do you feel like if somebody who doesn't do the management part you do in your day job gets into this, they probably would run into more problems because they're not used to the structure way of going under it?
I think there's probably 2 different viewpoints that I've got on that, and they're probably at odds with each other as well. So I'm probably gonna be a bit of a hypocrite about myself here, but I don't think that I ran it badly. I don't think I've necessarily run it well either. I suspect there's a lot of things that I could do to improve. And one thing that I will do if I do decide to do any more group buys is go out and ask the people that have been involved in this one what I could have done better and all of that kind of stuff, and get some feedback. In fact, it's something I'll do as soon as the last boards are posted and delivered. But I think that not necessarily giving, and I think my skills from a work perspective haven't necessarily given me any better way of doing it up front. I haven't particularly tried to run it as a project or as a product owner or anything like that. But what I think it has done is when things have gone wrong, it's allowed me to assess and send updates that have been relevant and meaningful and keep people in the loop. And then actually address the problems and fix them. I think that's probably where my skills have had the best strength, rather than necessarily thinking about it up front. I should have done a lot more planning. A project manager asking for a plan. It's ironic, really. But I didn't run it in a work sense. I didn't put my work head on and try and run it from that capacity. But perhaps I should have done. It might have run a lot smoother and a lot better if I had have done it that way.
Especially the when problems arise part is maybe the hardest thing for people. Like it's very stressful if you suddenly something goes wrong, and like you said, you're responsible for a lot of people money, and suddenly you have a problem and you maybe don't know how to handle it, and then maybe something a bit more experience or in that kind of setting probably helps a lot, like keeping you cool, finding solutions and stuff. So
yeah, I think the trick to any of that is not to panic. I won't mention any names, but I know I've seen some retailers or vendors or group buy runners get called out, and they sometimes don't make the right choice in how they respond in the first instance. They come out with a bit of response that's probably seen quite negatively by the community. And then they realise that they've just been a bit harsh or whatever, and they try and rectify that. I think the trick is to not panic, and whilst you need to give people timely updates, make sure you actually know what the problem is and how you're going to address it before you tell people. That way you're giving them confidence that you're going to address it properly, and they're not sat there worrying that you don't know what to do, and you don't know how to handle the situation.
That's pretty sound advice, I guess.
So the big question is, will there be another round of the Hyper 7?
If there is demand for it, there will be. If I want to do it again is probably a separate question. I've absolutely loved doing it, but I would hope that it would go a lot smoother next time. We'd iron out the problems with the plates, and that wouldn't happen again, and I wouldn't get married again, which wouldn't delay it further. That's how we're done with now. So I think it would be a lot smoother and easier if we do another round. But it needs the community to want it. I'm only going to do it if the community wants it. There's no point in me doing it if they don't want to. But I need a month off or a month or two off before we consider that.
Any idea what you would do differently if you run it again?
Yes, the first thing I would do is because the manufacturer for the plates isn't that far away from me. It's only about 300 miles. I would actually go and drive there and make them do it right instead of getting the mount points too small. I would probably go see them. It's something that I should have done on this one, and it's probably my biggest failure in the project is not going and having a chat with them and seeing up front how they could do it, and leaving everything to email and phone calls. That's not the best way to handle these things. Getting out there and going and seeing what the company are doing is probably the best thing to do. You can see that with Norbauer. He recently went out to Signature Plastics and he did a great video of visiting Signature Plastics. And I know that Mito went and saw GMK, and everyone's been really happy with how lasers come out with us as a result. So I think going and seeing your manufacturers and actually attending and working with them instead of just waiting for them to do a job, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would do differently.
Okay, will you package it again yourself?
I've actually discussed that if I do it with another round, how I'd manage that, and I'd probably team up with a vendor. I'm good friends with a couple of vendors from the UK community, and they've got a bit better infrastructure when it comes to being able to store, package, and ship items than I do out of my little tiny home office. So yeah, I would probably not do that side of it myself again, and I'd probably team up with one of the vendors to get that side sorted.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being our guest on the first episode.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Anytime.
And where can people find you?
So I'm on Reddit under usernames /u/Nodgers, NOJJERS. I'm on Discord as J Esoteric with a 3, so that's JAE 3SOTERIC, and I'm on Geekhack as John Flynn, which is my real name. So yeah, feel free to reach out and contact me if you want to.
Thanks everybody, especially people from the Europe Discord who helped me and Sebastian originally to come up with the idea, gave us feedback on a test episode where we changed a bunch of stuff, and just generally for making this project a reality for us. I want to give a special thanks to Ian Zawake, who is known as Chroma on the Mechanical Keyboard Discord, especially in the Europe channel, for providing our intro sound. And you can find more about her music from the links in the show notes if you want to check that out. And just thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jay, for being with us, and thank you all for listening. And next time I'm hopefully a bit more talkative, because I had to watch my voice today, because maybe you noticed I'm a bit sick today. But we wanted to bring out the first episode anyway, so.
Okay, thanks, Jay. That was really nice. It was much longer than the half an hour I expected, so.
you have to cut it down. I told you I can talk. I'll just keep talking if you give me the opportunity to.
Thank you for listening to our first episode of The International Kit. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter as @the_int_kit and on Twitch as _international_kit for occasional build streams. We also have a YouTube account where we post each episode as well, and you can find the links to all of that in the show notes. Until next time.